We just talked to Dane Placco there in Chicago, Illinois, as after 73 people were shot, 11 were killed during a violent 4th of July weekend. Certainly you heard from that reporting that it might be down year after year, but certainly those are still some large numbers from a major city here in the United States. And we were hearing from officials within the Chicago Police Department earlier today. Let's listen into this press conference from earlier here on LiveNOW.
Chicago Police Department, along with the city departments represented behind me. The Chicago Fire Department, Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, Chicago Department of Transportation, Chicago Park Districts, Streets and Sanitation, Department of Water Management, Department of Access and Information Services, Business Affairs, and Consumer Protections. CTA and all of our partners for the extensive amount of time, personnel, and resources that were dedicated to ensuring the safety of this weekend. We spent a full year planning leading up to this event for the past few days, and we believe that the hard work from this year has paid off. We have plans in place to handle the additional crowds, increased traffic citywide, as well as contingency planning for severe weather. There were many challenges that came our way, particularly related to severe weather, that were addressed in collaboration and head-on. Our top priority was always the safety of our residents and our visitors. In addition to conducting multiple daily coordination calls throughout the weekend, OMC staffed our Emergency Operations Center Friday evening through this morning. We had staff detailed citywide, including at the NASCAR Forward Command Post and throughout the city, monitoring and tracking flood damage. I want to specifically thank our OMC staff, our 911 call takers and dispatchers, our 311 dispatchers and call takers, our traffic management personnel, and our emergency managers, including all of their supervisors. Whether they are answering 20,000 calls per day that come into the 911 and 311 center, managing the Emergency Operations Center, or supporting operations and traffic out in the field, our team works tirelessly around the clock. They are here behind the scenes working every day so that their fellow Chicagoans can celebrate safely, especially during holidays and weekends. We are grateful for their commitment and the critical work they do every day. Finally, as we continue to look at the impacts of Sunday's storm, we ask that the residents of Chicago please call 311, visit 311.chicago.gov, or use the Shy 311 app to report water in your basement. Thank you very much. I'll now introduce Superintendent Fred Waller. Interim Superintendent Fred Waller. Apologize.
Thank you, Jose, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by acknowledging the victims of violence this weekend. Our deepest condolences are with the families who lost loved ones this weekend. We will not tolerate this violence in our neighborhoods, and we are doing everything we can to reduce and prevent this trauma within our communities. Today we're here at the Offices of Emergency Management and Communications, where our dispatchers and call takers are working behind us as we speak. I especially want to thank all of our emergency management workers at OEMC, who are often the first link in the lifeline of help and support for residents. Their efforts are invaluable to the public and our first responders. I also want to thank all of the city's departments and agencies, many of which are represented here with us today. Together we are united in our mission to equip and empower all Chicagoans. We all play a part in building a better Chicago and helping one another by making our city safer, sharing resources, and keeping our city running. Over the holiday yesterday and this past weekend, many residents and visitors came together for numerous events and celebrations. In neighborhoods and parks across Chicago, residents took part in Independence Day parades and picnics, as well as cultural festivities. In fact, yesterday I stopped by Sauganash in the 17th District and Hyde Park in the 2nd District for their 4th of July celebrations. Over the weekend, despite some seriously inclement weather, the city successfully hosted the first ever NASCAR street race and welcomed fans from all across the country. Before that, President Biden stopped in Chicago to deliver a major economic address on Friday. Every instance required advanced coordination and collaboration. And I could not be more proud of the men and women of the Chicago Police Department. They showed up every day, on every watch, ready to serve, protect, and engage communities in every part of the city. Officers were in Chopin Park for a Faith in Action event, and both Columbus Park and Garfield Park for youth baseball events. On Friday, our major auto theft investigation unit, along with the FBI and the Illinois statewide auto theft task force, recovered over 200 catalytic converters after an 8-month investigation. And over the weekend leading to the holiday, both gang investigations and the narcotic divisions led high-profile operations resulting in arrests and the recovery of illegal guns and narcotics. All of these efforts demonstrate our deep commitment to protecting residents and visitors and making Chicago safer. Excuse me. But it wouldn't be possible without the partnership of our fellow departments and agencies. With the weather this weekend, we witnessed the power of teamwork as our city dealt with heavy storms and continuing rain. Departments and agencies worked around the clock and continue to work to provide resources and information to Chicagoans. Deputy Chief Jill Stevens and Deputy Chief Dwayne DeVries, two of the incident commanders for NASCAR, said, when Chicago is given the ball, we don't drop it. And that couldn't be more true. We also saw the spirit in this city, or as Mayor Johnson says, the soul of Chicago, as residents went out of their way to help each other. Whether it was making sure a next-door neighbor was all right or saving a toddler from a car trapped in a flooded viaduct, neighbors stepped up. That's what public safety is about, community. So I want to personally thank you and everyone for looking out for each other. I now welcome Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, Gary and Gatewood.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent Waller, for the introduction. Good afternoon. I hope you all had a great weekend. As the superintendent said, this is a very busy weekend for the city of Chicago. It was made successful by partnerships across city government and with our communities. From President Biden's address on Friday to NASCAR's first ever Chicago street races and the Independence Day gatherings, our city was lively with people, celebrations, and large-scale events. The city of Chicago shines at putting on large-scale events, so we were ready and prepared for anything, including the inclement weather. Even though we had rain delays during Sunday's NASCAR race, I'm proud to say that the races were able to continue, and I thank NASCAR for their strong partnership and leadership throughout the weekend. Chicago looked beautiful in the spotlight, even with gray skies. Of course, Sunday's record rainfalls and unfortunately caused flooding in some of our neighborhoods and many resident homes and all along the Riverwalk. My heart aches for those who are dealing with the aftermath of the damage of the heavy rainfall. And I promise that the city will continue to work to support our neighbors and families as they repair their homes. Just over the past few days, the city has deployed 125 trucks that were cleaning and repairs, and on the 4th of July, 2,300 alleys were cleaned. We will continue working around the clock in deep collaboration with city agencies and community partners to continue our thoughtful responses. Throughout every moment of celebration and crisis of the weekend, the full force of city government was working to provide information and resources to keep residents and visitors safe. I want to thank all the city departments and agencies for your invaluable efforts throughout the weekend and throughout the summer. Thank you for playing a part in building a safer, stronger Chicago. I also want to thank community leaders, organizations who continue to support the city and work to keep our communities and people safe. True community safety can only be achieved by working together, and we saw togetherness on full display this weekend. This administration is deeply committed to partnerships as we continue to serve people in neighborhoods. We look forward to continued collaboration across city departments and across our city to have safe, fun, and a joyous summer. Thank you, and now we're going to open it up for questions if there are any.
Hi, I'm Megan Hickey, CBS Chicago. Just to start, there were shootings over the weekend, unfortunately some lives lost, but the count was actually down significantly from the same weekend last year. Wondering what you attribute to that, and if you at all attribute that to potentially the severe weather.
Oh, I'll give you some.
Yeah. You know, Officer Weather probably always does play a part in that, but I contribute a lot of it to the hard work that the men and women of the Chicago Police Department and all the agencies did this weekend. This was a big, big weekend. Probably, I don't remember in all the time I've been a policeman, a weekend where we had so many things clustered together, so many events on top of 4th of July. Was probably, historically, has been probably our most violent weekend. And the numbers were good up until, and we know, you know, what we faced early this morning.
Yeah, maybe just if you could touch on, there were, you know, several shootings as of, I believe, midnight, or right. You know, this morning.
Right.
Any thoughts on that sort of escalation? You know, again, sort of in tune with better weather, maybe.
Well, of course, it was very warm. a lot of people, a lot of gatherings, a lot of people were out. And that's almost a recipe for what we're seeing across the country, not just here in Chicago. But we try to have some tolerance and use some balance to tell people we want them to have a good time, but not to impede upon other people's rest and their peace when you start going into 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So we need to do a better job of dispersing some of those large gatherings.
Superintendent Dane Placco with Fox 32. The incident this morning in Englewood on Ada, can you talk a little bit about that? What happened there?
Well, we're still investigating it to see if it was something internal or if someone from outside shot into the crowd. When we have over 100 rounds of spent cartridges out, we know that that didn't just come from one side, but we're still investigating that. I know we had one person that's deceased, and we give the condolences to that person's family, but we're still investigating that whole scene. It was very early in the morning, but the detectives were out there, and they're still out there now investigating that scene.
Craig Wall with ABC7. Just following up on the Ada thing, we heard reports that this party was going on from noon until 5 o'clock in the morning. What did your officers do? Did they respond to any calls about this large gathering, and should more have been done to disperse this? And then I have a follow-up question for the fire department.
Right. We're looking back as far as hindsight. Something more should have been done, but we're still looking at were there calls for service, what exactly happened up until the point that they were shooting. I know I saw some reports that said there was a small group of maybe 25 to 50 that increased over time as it went early into the morning.
I had a couple of questions for my colleague, Michelle Gallardo, to the fire department, if there's somebody from the fire department. Commissioner, can you tell us a little bit about the fires that broke out near Midway overnight? Michelle is wondering that fireworks seem to have been involved, but it seems to be an awfully big fire to have simply been caused by fireworks. Can you address that?
Well, considering how many fireworks are being set off throughout the night, I know I heard a lot around my house all the way up until this morning. In the Clearing neighborhood, we actually had a garage, an alley garage that started the fire, and they were frames. So frames can communicate relatively quickly, and it also, besides the 5 garages that were on fire, it also radiated heat toward 2 houses, the one structure that was immediately connected to the original fire structure and the one next door. So we always ask, every year we push the message out time and time again, leave the fireworks to the professionals, but as we can see, that doesn't happen all the time.
And it seemed like before the holiday weekend, the word was that you were going to crack down on illegal fireworks displays. OAMC still saying that there were over 2,000 calls for fireworks received to dispatch, and fireworks going on all along the lakefront. How did this still seem to happen? Was it just too difficult to shut them all down?
Well, the fire department can't shut down fireworks. So, but all we can do is push out the information, educate people well ahead of the holiday. We had a press conference talking about the hazards and what can happen with fireworks. Besides property damage and loss of limbs, it's loss of life as well, and it can spread pretty rapidly. So, I mean, we push it out as best we can. It's an enforcement piece to that, and you have to be there when they're doing it to stop it.
We do some things with the fireworks, but it's not low on the totem pole when somebody, of course, a fire and somebody gets hurt, but we have to really pool our resources to do other things when we have calls, shots fired and people battering each other, so we have to really gauge what we're going to respond to as far as the fireworks. Go ahead.
Superintendent, following up on sort of Megan's question, because you know, based on what you've told us, even the body language, the fact you called this today, you know, you obviously are pleased with how things went with all these challenges beginning with President Biden's visit. So can you just talk a little bit about what was different this time? What made the violence numbers be a little bit better? What made you successful? Was it, you know, because you don't have more officers. What was it your planning? Like what made the difference?
I'd like to say that the planning, but again, I give the credit to the men and women of the Chicago Police Department. The hard work that they do. I was over on 108th and Wentworth, where we had a large team gathering. I think the officers recovered about 6 guns from there. So that those engagements are like armed encounters, right? So in that, we keep people from being hurt. We dispersed the crowd, had a few arrests, but we got about 6 guns. And so those type of events, when we're involved in those, that's when we do our best work. But this weekend, a lot of planning, a lot of long-term planning went into NASCAR, of course. We're always planning long-term for the 4th of July. Of course, the weather being what it was for NASCAR, I'm sure that kept some people off the street who normally would be on the street, and we see what happened yesterday early in the morning. So I still think that we did a great job overall. You can't say that to the people who lost their lives, that we did a great job, but the effort was there.
Hi, Superintendent. Charlie Wojciechowski from Channel 5. And I'd like to go back to the idea of enforcement and fireworks. We just came from the fire by Midway and saw the damage there. And people in the neighborhood told us they didn't see any police. I personally witnessed an incident at Ohio Street Beach where there were fireworks for more than 2 hours. I know there were multiple calls to police. Cars stopped on Lakeshore Drive to watch it. Why wasn't anything done in that case, and why isn't more being done? Why aren't fireworks, as dangerous as Commissioner Holt says they are, a higher priority for your department?
Where you were, how many, approximately how many people were out there where you were?
About maybe 100. Oops, I'm sorry.
100 people?
There were 100 people on the beach. I bring it up because I made one of the calls,
right.
And we saw no law enforcement.
Right.
And I live in a high-rise building,
right.
which the residents I talked to this morning say they felt they were being fired upon
right.
from the beach. And still, why is it not a priority, and what do you do when you get a call? Does it just go to the back of the burner?
It doesn't go to the back of the burner, but we would be fielding and responding to hundreds and hundreds of calls of those type of calls coming out on the 4th of July and on those type of weekends. Not to say that those calls aren't important and that we do respond to them. Sometimes I have to look at why we didn't, where those cars were, why they didn't respond to that. But that we have to really do priorities, because if you say fireworks as opposed to someone with a gun, a man with a gun, or somebody battering someone, those type of cases and those type of calls are going to take priority over the fireworks. And I know that a lot of people had fireworks. I mean, I know what you're saying, because when we drove past some people were lighting fireworks.
You're just listening in there to police officials discuss a violent 4th of July. As you heard, there were fireworks on a beach there, and they were curious about maybe why police weren't able to be present at that despite calls for several hours. I want to continue on here on Live Now from Fox. A live look there from our Earth Cam partners over Lake Michigan as the long 4th of July weekend in Chicago began with 4 men shot in Chicago lawn and ended with 5 people shot and a man beaten to death in an attack in Inglewood. So certainly a lot of concern there, a lot of headlines around a violent weekend in Chicago.